Good evening and welcome to Monday night's segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Syracusa, and Philip Syracusa. We are broadcasting live from the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. You'll have to do a few things in order to participate. Go over to the YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio, get into chat. Subscribe if you haven't. You could go into all of the United Public Facebook stations, Twitch, SoundCloud, and Podbean. You can also go over to the UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo on Facebook as well. And I can only respond to your comments on our YouTube channel on UFO Paranormal Radio. And if you have any questions for our guest, please ask. So today, we have an amazing guest, so please welcome John Griffin II to the show. He is the founder of the UNI research team based out of Albany, New York area. He has dedicated his life to finding what he refers to as the one truth that will end all division by performing intense and controversial research using a method called the paranormal puzzle, all while maintaining a neutral mindset. John was inspired to do this after everything he's experienced and observed throughout his younger years, all the way through his 20s. His stories and investigations have been featured on television shows such as Maiko's Story, Caught on Camera, Paranormal Survivor, Beyond the Dimensions, and Paranormal 911. John is also the producer for the Paranormal Puzzle series on Paraflix. So for more information, check out his Facebook group, Paranormal Puzzle by UNI. Please let's welcome John to the show.
Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you. How's it going?
That's good. That's quite an extensive resume you got there.
Definitely.
And you're a young guy too, so you've been through a lot. And I was reading that age 4 you had experiences. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure. That's basically lived in a haunted location up until the age of 19. So I can't say it's 19 years of worth of experience because the first experience was truly at 4. But even prior to that, my parents later on in life told me that as a infant, they were dealing with some things here and there, like footsteps going into my room and such. So didn't know about that until later.
Wow, that's pretty scary. So take us to the beginning of your story. Like, we know that you had all these experiences as a young child, but what really drove you into really researching the paranormal? Because you are what I call a true researcher. More, I would say, a real paranormal researcher. You've done such really amazing things. So tell us.
No, I appreciate it, and it's very it delves into the emotional side of it. I mean, it's to me, it's not just simply like a ghost story or demonic attacks or anything of that sort. That all comes together in the full package, but ultimately, it was how it socially impacted me. And later on in life, learning about because my brother and I, we leaned on each other, during this, because at the time it was kind of that alone in the world feeling where, we went to a religious school and ghosts didn't exist. So bringing that up was a huge mistake at even at childhood. And just seeing how this affected both my brother and I, how we ended up becoming outcasts. We were especially for myself, I can't speak fully for my brother on this part, but I was that one kid that was sitting alone at the lunchroom table. And this is all because I spoke out about ghosts. At the time, when I was dealing with this at age 4 in nursery school, I referred to them as disappearing people. I didn't know the term ghosts. So it's just kind of seeing how it followed me, because people from some of the kids from nursery school followed me into my elementary school, and then all that information traveled to me to junior high and high school. Um, so I saw how I ended up not really having much of a childhood as a result of this. And I started, because I had a lot of time to think, there was a lot of sitting back and reading books about it. When we finally gained access to the internet, AOL dial up and all that. Am I dating myself yet? It's it, when you started seeing videos and seeing other people posting things, and then the TV shows, it was like, okay, so there's more than just me who's dealing with this. It kind of opened up that world where before it was just kind of like my own little world. And it made me wonder if anybody else was going through the same exact thing or very similar to what I was going through. And knowing how this made me feel and the effects that I saw that it had on my brother, that's where that drive started to kick in, especially at age 16 is when it really started to kick into gear.
Yes, and at age 16, I think you first started a paranormal team, correct?
Yeah. Yep. The TPO, the Paranormal Officer Squad, TPO squad.
Wow. I mean, that's really young. I mean, by then you must have really been into the research.
So at 16 years old, were you a firm believer that, hey, ghosts do exist?
On the believer portion, or the belief side, yeah. But that was it was more established during even my elementary days, even pre-teen days, that once I learned about ghosts and stuff like that, I knew I started to study what I was dealing with. So it was just kind of, I was more on the amateur level jumping into that at that point, because the field was very new. I didn't know people did this stuff. I didn't realize that people were going out and using video cameras and audio recorders and all these different things. So I decided, let me give it a shot. Let's see what comes out of this.
And it's like a bucket. You get a lot what you're asking for the other side. And have you seen with your own eyes like an apparition in front of you, by the side of you?
Multiple times.
Okay. What does it look like?
Some of it, like the first, I'll go with the first one. Like the first one wasn't really an apparition. It was more of a shadow figure. It was very, very dark, very like blacker than black. It was like more black than the black background. And I used to keep my bedroom door like propped open. And at the time I would hear breathing. It was like there was a breathing coming by my bedroom, the entrance to my bedroom. And when I would look up, I saw just this figure just standing there. Just a silhouette, complete blackness, just looking in at me. And there were points where I would walk out into the hallway. I would hear my basement door open, which was down by where my brother's room was when he was a baby. And I would start hearing, he had a sliding door. His sliding door would start, I would hear it slide open, and I would go out and look down the hall, and I would see like just a shadow figure just walking into his room. And then I would hear him start crying. The time that I actually saw the figure straight on, my brother and I, we got so freaked out he stopped sleeping in his bedroom when he could finally walk and talk. He was coming into my room. I would wake up and he'd be sleeping in my bed. And then we ended up having bunk beds. Well, there was a point where we got so freaked out because of it just kept on coming into our room after that we started sleeping in the living room for about 7 years. And at the 7-year point, that's where I finally saw the figure. I remember waking up. It was about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and usually my dad would be waking up at that or getting up at that point and getting ready for work. And my brother was sleeping on the larger couch. I was sleeping on the love seat next to my parents' bedroom door. I heard walking in the kitchen, and then I see a male, middle-aged male, walk in, very properly dressed. He had I even saw the color of his clothing. He had a blue shirt, khaki pants. We'll never forget it. Walks in. He stops partway in the living room, turns and looks at me, stares at me for a bit, turns and looks towards where my brother is and starts walking towards my brother. And I tried to let out a yell or something to wake up my brother, and I just could not get it out. He disappeared before he got up to my brother, but it was just
Wow.
I've seen them from the side view, and the interesting thing is that my brother saw him, but he saw him wearing a hunter outfit, and he saw him with glowing red eyes. So, but when it came down to like facial features, the height of him and stuff like that, it all matched up. It was just the clothing and the nature of his appearance that changed for both of our story.
Wow.
So did you ever find out who was
I was
it?
going to ask that.
Actually, my brother was doing research on that. There was actually, I forgot, you said it was like 7 or 8 years of missing history on the house. So we never actually found out who it was or if there was anyone there during the missing history, but there was just under 10 years of missing history. Unfortunately, I don't know how much further he went with that. My brother has passed away this year.
Sorry.
We're really sorry about that.
No, thank you. I don't know. I'm still going through his belongings. I'm hoping that maybe there's something that he has notes in, because I know he printed off stuff. He did have stuff printed off, and I just don't know if that went with it when they had to do the renovations on the room.
Okay.
So at this point of your life, you got a pretty big career in paranormal and all these shows that you've been on and the paranormal puzzle. Do you feel, or have you seen, do you think that the same apparition from way back in the day may be still lingering around, or it's gone?
When we moved out, I haven't seen it since.
Okay.
Okay, and that's been how long?
We moved out when I was 19. I'm 35 now.
Okay. Now, from your knowledge, again, you've been on quite a few shows and you have your team. So from your knowledge, you've also had experiences maybe with demonic and UFOs, like aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes the dark shadows, I've seen them in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And I really try to figure that out. Is it interdimensional beings? Which means that it's something unnatural that we just don't understand, because what I did learn from having so many teams in my own home is that they're so intelligent, not just by the visual of, I thought I see the black shadow, but the recordings. I mean, these things know what you're thinking, know what you're typing on your cell phone, and they tell the person who may be in your backyard on their thing through a speaker that they're using, and it blows my mind. And unless you really try to analyze it and debunk it, it's really hard to figure out. But I do know from my own self that what you've dealt with and what we've dealt with, there's so many similarities. I ask myself sometimes, is it a demonic force? Is it a spirit that is part of the family history? Or is it something else, like a being from somewhere else? Because the intelligence is there, and it's way ahead of us.
The demonic entity specifically, that came in at a later time. That was more into my teens, and that was actually more directed at me. Jeremy never really said that he came into contact with any demonic entities, so it seemed to be coming after me. And I mean, I remember that first encounter. It was the first time I really understood what a demonic entity was, and I dealt with that for so many years. It was pretty much, it was always there were two children ghosts, one in which I only saw once, another one that was hiding in the attic, and then the one that we referred to as the hunter, which was that shadow figure guy. But then later on, it's like they disappeared, and this other entity came into the picture. And it seemed like it calmed down for my brother. It didn't calm down for me. At least he didn't say anything to me. So I just won't forget just actually seeing the entity for the first time. Like, not even the full, I didn't see full body or anything like that, but I saw like half of the face, and that was...
Yeah.
Can you describe demonic?
Demonic is it what the entity looked like? Or the one that I saw?
The feeling that you got, the oppression, the negative energy. Look, how did you come up with the label demonic is what I'm trying to figure out.
Part of it ended up being firstly the appearance of the entity, and then what it was doing. It was different than what the hunter was, or what we referred to as the hunter and the other ghosts were doing. This one just seemed like it was trying to go after me, and I didn't catch on to it for a little while. That it seemed like it was coming at me very in more of a psychological manner, between changes in dreams, markings appearing on my body, even the feeling of the environment where I just didn't want to be anywhere within the house anymore. Coming home from school, I actually had this huge dread of walking in the door, but then actually seeing this specific thing, seeing it was not human, it really just...
Yeah,
there was just so much about the haunting that changed, and it seemed like it was in a snap.
Yeah.
And did it take you over mentally? A lot of these cases, demonic hauntings, it'll oppress you, make you feel like you're worthless, and then other times you'll have a very bad temper, and then other times you just feel this rage of hate towards others, and you don't know why.
That was very, very strong, yes. And age of 16, I would say that was the strongest, where it seemed like it was influencing me at one point. I had that point of worth, or that feeling of worthlessness, and I was just like, what's the point of life anymore?
Yeah.
And almost went in that direction, and then when I caught myself, and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I even thinking this? There's no reason for me to be thinking this right now. And then I turned and I saw the one entity, that entity just standing further in the background, and I'm like, okay, at this point, like, my mind is starting to get to the point of being very analytical. I'm very OCD on everything. So it was just kind of like 2 and 2. Like, okay, is this play any role? Why am I seeing this here, and I just experienced this? So it just seemed like with everything that I was going through, I had to grow up very fast. And I'm not going to say that I was definitely the most intelligent person. I mean, when my teachers, or when my teacher from second grade said, we were going to have, she said that the day was ketchup day, I literally thought that it was ketchup. And I got super excited while the rest of the class was just like all bummed out. Everybody else got it but me. So I'm like, yeah, that's an elementary thing that could define me a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, what these things could do to your mind. I mean, if you have any kind of an addiction, they'll go after your addiction. They'll intensify everything, your rage, your hate. The dreams will become night terrors. And then it's almost as if you're manifesting this thing by giving it energy of thought. And the more you think about it, because you're tricked, right? The devil's about deception. I'll show you the left, but I'm really going to hit you with the right. It'll never tell you. That's why demonic entities don't give out names. It's always a trick. It's always been that way. And it's up to the person to try to you have to be mentally strong. Let's
it's
put it
really
that way,
hard. It's really hard to do.
overcome it. And it sounds like you're doing really good, which we want to talk about some of the shows you've been on. So, right?
Yes. Well, let's get to the show. So you've been on quite a few Paranormal 911, Paranormal Survivor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us about how are these experiences for you being on TV?
You know, in some cases it's stressful, especially when it was like my ghost story and the whole casting process and such. It was actually a huge headache, but it was actually enjoyable. But it's also looking at these contracts and all these type of things, and because to me these are these stories that I'm turning over to them, because they're gonna have some rights and all that, the production companies and such.
Yeah.
So to me, when I'm looking at these stories and deciding what's going to be out, what I'm going to hand over, I know that these stories are going to represent different people, and they're going to be portrayed in specific ways. And the question is how are people, going to be portrayed? Are they going to go and really alter the story and make the story what it's not? And I won't say I won't say which one on this one, but there was one of those that I almost got up and actually walked off the set, because it was getting to the point that it was like, you're trying to change my story. Is this even my story anymore? Just let me read off of a card if you want me to narrate. So yeah, that was a point where they had to take a break.
I think I might know which one you're
talking about. It's funny
because
we went through that ourselves, and I'm not going to name the TV shows. Actually, it was a couple of them, and they wanted our story, and I tell the truth. Look, if I'm going to live it, and my children are going to live it, I'm not going to tell you things that don't happen, okay? Like my pictures don't fly off the walls, my walls don't bleed.
Especially if it's a true
I'll tell you the
story.
truth, but the truth wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to hear things that were more fluff to make the story. And I'm against that, because if you're going to live this life, I want facts out there.
And
I don't want anything
if it's an interview like that.
Yeah.
Because Paranormal Survivor, it's not like a movie like The Conjuring where, you're going to put some fluff in there with the truth, because it's a movie. But when they're doing like a real interview like that, you really want the truth to be told.
Yeah.
I'll
give kudos to one of the shows, the one that we filmed for my brother, for the story of my brother and I, for Paranormal Survivor. There was one part in there that I asked the producer to leave in there, and it was where I made mention people deserve to be able to should be able to tell their story, and that basically that I'm here to talk to them, and they left it in. They left that part in, and I was so ecstatic about that. I did have a bunch of people who actually reached out to me from that show, and wanted to just simply talk, meet. In fact, some of the people that are on my team, that's how we met, was through them seeing the show, and then we met up, we talked. They got to hear the real story, and they got to tell their story, and we just meshed. And I've made some really, really good friends in the field, outside of the field. It's been great.
That's great.
Yeah, that's really good.
I want to talk about the paranormal puzzle.
Oh yeah,
I am dying to know how this all came about. And you also are a producer on it too for Paraflix.
So paranormal puzzle is a research approach that we use, and when we were deciding on if we were going to do like a series or something like that, we really wanted to make it more of a, obviously for like TV, there has to be the entertainment value of it. Otherwise people aren't going to want to watch it. But we wanted to put like an educational spin on it without it making it seem like it's like educational. Like, as you hear educational, all of a sudden you shut off, you don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Some people not so much, but we wanted to show the way that we're doing this specific research, in an entertaining way. And we wanted people to take something out of it, like a series that basically makes them think outside the box and understand how we're approaching it. So when we were developing this, we were deciding on how to go about introducing the concept, how many parts it would take to introduce the basic concept of it, and then grow to the more advanced portions of it. So it's almost kind of like a mini universe, so to speak, that we're kind of forming. So right now we've got Secrets of Wilson Castle and Secrets of Wildwood Sanitarium, and then next month Path to Communication. They're all in the Paranormal Puzzle universe. There are technically 3 mini-series. They ultimately are all going to connect at some point. But every single one of the shows, as you're going through the episodes, everything is placed there for a reason. And at the season finale or series finale, that's where you basically you're essentially trying to see what the puzzle is, and then it comes out of essentially what happens is there's kind of a twist.
Yes.
So all of a sudden it's like, okay, I think we know what they're going after, and then all of a sudden we just kind of switch it up and go, well, here's actually what we're doing. And it just, for some people, when they've watched it, there was like, wow, that was really out of left field. I didn't think of it this way.
Wow.
So that's where we were kind of looking to head with that, is kind of introduce the research method, and show the different, basically that we're not just, displaying like evidence out there, but also what we're doing with it. What are we learning from it? And how it's meant to be a progressive story, so it's going to continuously advance. Like, we're not just going to go to Wildwood Sanitarium and we're going to forget about Wildwood Sanitarium. We're going to keep on flashing back to moments that show what led up to this moment if we succeed in the research. And then we're also going to show the moments where we try something and we fail. That's all within the research. There are going to be moments where things just don't work, which ultimately it's not really a failure, as my brother would put it. It's an answer. It's not it's just another door shut, and we open up another door and start heading down that path and see if that's it. And if it's not it, well, that's also an answer too. We shut that door and continue until we find the right door.
I like it. What's the most compelling evidence that you have? EVP,
good question.
picture.
My current favorite one is actually the one my brother took, which is in Chapter 3 of Secrets of Wilson Castle. That one was of an apparition. We were using long exposure photography, and we were at the same time doing double sensory deprivation. So we had one person that was two people that were wearing blindfolds and had white noise playing. One was there's a coffin in this coffin on the 3rd floor. One was in the coffin, and the other one was standing outside of there. And we were testing a few things. We wanted to see if an entity could transfer images or not just voices, but how are they transferring messages? Because apparently, they can supposedly insert themselves into dreams in some way. Well, this was another variation of that test, only more conscious. One of our researchers picked up Robin Ramsey, our scientific applications director for the team. She said that she saw this guy and he looked angry, and she was saying like he had his fist down like this. And when at that moment, Jeremy had snapped a picture, and it usually takes, with long exposure, it could take a few seconds to even close up to a minute, depending on the lighting and the environment, for the picture to actually fully, complete the process. But he took the picture, and we caught an apparition with a guy with his fists clenched, exactly as Robin described it. And the other kicker to it was, and this was the other reason we were using long exposure, is because we were hoping to also capture, this was the other secret that we didn't mention in the other 2 chapters. We wanted to see if there was a possibility of capturing the manifestation process, because during the long exposure, it's taking in as much light as it can. So we want to see possible direction of travel, or could we see how it's forming? Like, at what point does it form? At what point does it, dissipate? This photo captured that to a degree. It was the first photo out of 19 years of doing this, the first photo that we actually caught this. So we see this little light, it's like a streak of light, and it's leading up to the head of the entity, and then you just see it start to expand until it's the full body. And that just completely blew my mind. So we've been studying that photo since we caught it, quite some time. That was back in September 2020 we caught that one.
Wow.
Very interesting. Have you caught, I'm sure you have, EVPs, like, Class A EVPs?
Oh, a lot.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked?
Well,
Okay.
like I'm saying is, have you gotten an intelligent response from a Class EVP where the spirit says what you're doing when you're doing it, or I'm here and I'm watching you too?
Yes. That's actually from... we've had so many advancements in the research of EVPs, and we just did recently a experiment called Limitations of Ghosts, and we actually caught 2 entities talking about what we were doing. One was asking me what I was doing, and then another one was just like, I forgot what the exact wording was, but it's like, he's just doing what he can. Something to that effect, basically, just as if they were having a or there was a dialogue about this. I'm like, and there was a point where I'm going through these recordings, I'm like, this can't be real. Because, and we do a lot of statistics. There's a lot of statistic analysis we do. I mean, I'm a very, very big numbers person, very big numbers and trends person. This was defying the trends that I've had over the years of all the EVP research I've done. So when I was seeing this and just how much this broke the trend, and now we have to go back and really research it, because we're either really onto something or something went completely off. But I've had multiple members of our team research it, not telling them what to listen for. It's just like, listen to this. Do you hear what we hear? Plus, on top of that, this experiment was done at a location where we're familiar with what all the ghosts sound like there. It's usually the same ghosts: Tommy, Dr. Henderson, Dr. Perry, some of the nurses. We've been there probably about 50 times now within the past few years. So we're familiar with their voices, and we were all able to go back and verify the specific voices of those specific entities. So we know there's something to it, and we're going back at the end of October this month to replicate that experiment and try some other things to go with it to see if we can replicate the results, essentially.
Wow. I mean, that's really amazing.
Would you say residual?
No, these were intelligent responses. At least some of them. Some of them, they could be, or they're just talking to each other, and we just so happen to catch part of the conversation. So I'm not sure if some of it truly was residual. I'm a bit neutral on that one. Some of them were definitely intelligent and very straightforward to us.
Yeah.
So straightforward would mean that they see in our time, we made up time, but they're still coexistent in the spiritual realm and still can interact with us, which to me is a mind blow. And I kind of believe that through what I've been through investigating other locations, that it's as if they're going on, but they can come into our world through that veil as well, when our intent is strong enough to want them to come through. And that goes back to any device like a Ouija board, even though I do not recommend it, but
It's the intent.
it's fascinating because I always try to debunk the Ouija board. It's, oh, come on, it's psychosomatic, power of thought, you're moving it, but when you get the really incredible answers that you can't get because you don't know and the other person using it doesn't know, and it's validated, you're like, wait a second, this is real. And then, you get the EVPs, the recordings of, hey, I see you too. I'm watching you. That creeps me out, but, and then these certain locations, like you said, you go back to locations, and it's still in that, I don't know if it's that era of time that they were in before they crossed. That to me is the tricky one. What are they doing on that side? Are they still doing? So, like, the movie The Others, where they didn't know they were the ghost, right? And it's sort of like they don't know maybe that they've crossed, and some maybe we're the ones who may be the ghost to them. It's fascinating, it's mind-blowing, it's intriguing, and I love what you do because I like the same way. You want to get really down to the bottom of it, right? Life after death, which I'm a firm believer in, reincarnation, deja vu. You felt like you've been there before, and quite frankly, you have. And the intent process, and I like the blindfold thing too, because when I used to do the Ouija board with someone, I would blindfold them, and then at one point, I would take my fingers off the planchette and ask the questions to see if I was getting real answers, and it wasn't my thoughts. And sure enough, they lead me right to the graveyard and tell me where they're buried. And that to me is like, wow. And then there's the other things that come through, the negative forces sometimes. You had said in the beginning of the show about the dark shadow, the children. And we've dealt with something similar where we would talk to children with paranormal teams here, and then they say, well, we have to go, the bad man's coming, bad man's coming. And then through their DVR systems, you see this massive black shadow casting through the walls. And it's as if they're somehow intertwining good and evil on that other side. What's your thoughts?
So when it comes down to the shadow figures, we started developing a hypothesis in regards to the figures themselves, because it's like, okay, you're seeing a figure without color, because when you're looking at light, black is the absence of color. Sure. But at the same time, we're seeing a black object against a black back, and we saw this at Wilson Castle. Mike Hatcher from Beyond the Dimensions and myself, we chased this figure. We saw this black figure against a completely black background. That doesn't make any sense to us. So there was enough mass for this thing to appear for our eyes to see it, but our eyes couldn't register the color. Yeah. So we started looking at this from more of a, as opposed to it being, a shadow figure being demonic or evil or something like that. We're just thinking this might be a color spectrum thing, or whatever the composition they're made out of, that we have to explore it more, that it's just, this is how they manifested, and they manifested out of a certain spectrum, but there was enough mass for our eyes to be able to register it. So, but it registered it as black.
Yeah.
So the shadow figures, I'm not saying that, like, none of the hypothesis out there about them being different entities is not a thing. Obviously, there's not enough to support fully that that's a fact. It still could very well be a thing, or it could be a combination of many things. I mean, that's the whole paranormal puzzle aspect of it.
That's true. You really don't know, but what you do know is this: the heart, the intent, the mind, and the control that some of these things do have over us. I've seen people getting taken over in slight possession, and is it true? If there's enough thought process and intention of belief, and even atheist people I've challenged that didn't believe in any of this stuff, they call it all nonsense. I've called them out. I invited them to my home. They lasted an hour. and they left because they're like, I cannot explain what I don't believe, and I don't believe, but I can't still explain it, and I want no part of it. So that's how I do my experiments, trying to prove the existence of the other side, which does exist. You're doing a great job. I love what you're doing. Tell us what your plans are now for the future and Powerflix.
Well, next month we have Paranormal Puzzle Path to Communication. The first chapter is going to launch on November 28th. We have another series that's going to begin combining the location type of series. We haven't announced that one, what the subtitle of that's going to be. But next year, at the end of the year, we're going to be releasing the first full-length feature Paranormal Puzzle not movie, more documentary. So it'll be Paranormal Puzzle Secrets of the Unknown. And we've been doing a lot of work in the background besides, and we have 2 other series that we'll be bringing to Paraflix as well, that we haven't announced yet, but they'll be coming out. We're working on bringing them out next year for them. Right now, there's a lot of background work that we're doing. We have multiple teams that we're working with, creating a more in-depth research system. We're basically combining forces, working on different experiments, and collecting data, developing reports on them, and basically trying to move things forward in different directions. We have multiple experiments lined up right now. And like I said, very data-driven. Our team is very data-driven. So it's basically wherever the numbers take us, that's where we're going.
Wow.
And it's, I can tell you next year, some of the stuff that you talked about, like the whole, they can see our thoughts, see what we're typing and stuff like that. We actually have experiments that are going to be featured on the episodes, that where we do mind reading experiments and try to see if we just think the thoughts, and can they tell us what we were thinking, so we have physical documentation of it. So, and it's actually something that I gotta it's going to be in the path to communication portion of this. My brother was actually doing notes on that because we were discussing about that. He actually has a couple pages in his diary, his research diary, where he was talking about the transfer of information between people and entities as well. So he even has and I'm not he was a math equation person, whereas I'm more of statistics and numerology, and he also did some stats too. He has an equation in there, and I'm like, oh, well, of course, I can't ask him about it, but it's there.
We're so happy that you have his research, so you can carry on whatever he was working on. So, yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And also, special thank you to your team. You guys are really doing a great job.
We definitely want to do part 2. We're out of time right now because another show coming up, but we want a part 2 with you. I have a lot more detailed questions. You're very intelligent, well-spoken, and I'm looking forward to doing a second segment. John, thank you so much. John Griffin II. I like that.
Thank you for coming on tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Julie, wrap it up.
Okay, guys. Well, we want to have a special thank you to Carnation for fully sponsoring this show. We love them. And please join us next Monday night on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. And stay tuned for the Angel Rock with the amazing Laura Lee.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Please
you, share this show. It's a great show.
It really was.
Everyone have a great, safe week, and we'll catch you next Monday night. And we're going to have John back on very soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, John. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care. Thank you.